Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express Recruiting Show. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. Excited to go live. Had the podcast thumbnail done yesterday, got ahead on things, and I just thought, let's just do it live. So we are here with you guys live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook as well for the ontheponyexpress.com community. We've got a ton to get to on recruiting. A new junior college offer goes out, and we do all that and more on this edition of the podcast, presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency, which starts right now.
SMU fans know the importance of protecting the football. Northwest Insurance has been protecting Dallas families and businesses for over 30 years. Founded and led by proud SMU alumnus Mark Villasana, the agency fights for its clients, finding the best coverage at the lowest rates. From auto and home to business and life insurance. At Northwest, we make sure you're covered so you can focus on the big wins. Call 214-352-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com. Northwest Insurance, coverage that's always a victory. Pony up.
Northwest Insurance.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome into the recruiting show. Thanks for joining me. I'm Billy Embody. We've got a lot to talk about today as I've been working the phones all week, catching up with SMU coaches about the guys that they've signed in this 2026 recruiting class. Going to kind of share some of the takeaways that I have on this recruiting class from the coaches, as well as share my own takeaways about maybe what went right, what went maybe not according to plan, maybe what's not a big deal, maybe what is a big deal. We'll do all of that and talk about a new junior college prospect that SMU is targeting. We do that and more on this show, which the recruiting show is presented by our friends at Horn Legend. Horn Legend is delivering you a tremendous opportunity to look like a hero Christmas morning by using code PONY for free shipping on your last minute holiday orders. Get them in. The SMU collection is just outstanding. You could even do the children's health collection as well, which helps you benefit the children's health world for SMU's collaboration with them. They've got custom polos, pullovers, and more on that respect. Great chance to take care of your favorite SMU fan with some Horn Legend gear. Again, it is just an outstanding brand. You guys know it. I've said it before when talking about apparel. I'm a sweater. It breathes. It helps me stay cool. Even though it is getting cooler around Dallas, it is still a process to stay nice and cool. And our friends at Horn Legend make some unbelievable gear that you guys should check out. Give it a try. Again, code PONY gets you free shipping. And then if you need to return it, you can easily do that, as well as their return policies. Simple to go through. So appreciate them for supporting the recruiting show. Let's get into this 2026 recruiting class for SMU. Ranked in the top 25 in the Rivals industry ranking. They are sitting there with 23 signees now. A great situation to be in for SMU. That's a good number. I like 20 to 25 every single high school class. I think once you start getting into that 25 to 30, unless you're, I don't know, it just seems like a number that could be used elsewhere on some players that can more so help you right away. And so that's why I think the 20 to 25 is a nice number. And SMU did that this cycle, but they could be going after one more. And let's lead off with that. And a new prospect to keep an eye on is Jarquez Perry. He is a junior college prospect at Itawamba Community College. He just wrapped up his freshman season over there at one of the more well-known junior college programs in the state of Mississippi. He's a Grenada, Mississippi native, a true freshman in the junior college ranks. So that is something worth noting. He would have, in theory, 4 years to play 3 of college football. And he had an all-conference season as well out there playing for Itawamba. And check out the highlights here. And this is a really intriguing outside linebacker edge prospect that we're showing you some clips on as we get into it here. And he can play, on the edge. He can line up a little bit inside as well, but also maybe a little bit off ball backer. And that's something that I think SMU, if you want my opinion here, just right off the bat and what this offer means, I think they look at him as somebody that right off the bat you can see contributing on special teams. You can see his body type be one where you can move him around a little bit, be a different versatile piece, and at the same time be young enough that you can have him for multiple years and get him in position to be a real big contributor down the line. I think his size is something that stands out. He moves pretty well in space for his size, 6'1", 245. So, most of the time you'd see him be kind of a true thumper in the middle of that linebacker unit, but primarily came off the edge for Itawamba and added 26 total tackles, 4.5 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss, 13 quarterback pressures this season. And he's going to be somebody that now SMU has on the radar and keep an eye on him. And the offer went out over the weekend to him. And I think when you look at defensive body types, and this is my overall train of thought here, without having talked with anyone about, hey, why do you offer this guy? Even though, let's say, programs like Jackson State, programs like Jacksonville State, Western Kentucky, and others offered him during the fall. Well, now SMU, Arizona State, Kansas, and I think maybe one other have come into the fold as a power 4 offer here in the early goings of December. Well, now you have your class filled. You have everybody signed. So what you can do with this here is you can play with the numbers a little bit and say, okay, SMU, if you look at 2024, they had some really nice pieces for special teams. They were able to have guys that, just in general, weren't going to play as a linebacker for SMU. And they weren't going to play on the field in the defense in that position. Devon Celestine was added at the defensive back position. Terrian Lee was added at the linebacker position. Those ads were special teams based. I mean, that's just what it was. And so this is somebody that could run down on kickoff and play with physicality. He can add a little bit of versatility if he were to get defensive snaps. And I think that's where SMU is looking at the junior college ranks and saying, yes, we can get a difference maker in David Chukwumeka and Tavion Atkinson. And at the same time, go after somebody late here like a Jarquez Perry, and we can maybe address some needs in the transfer port or in the junior college ranks on special teams and roster building depth guys that have the physical makeup that you need to hold up and play teams and upgrade in that respect. And I think that's a really fascinating piece to keep an eye on here as they go through the recruiting process now with Jarquez Perry, who I'll be hoping to catch up with here soon. We already follow each other on Twitter. I've always been fascinated by Mississippi recruiting, even before my ties to it earlier this year, because it is underscouted, resources are slim, and it is hard to get to. And I think that's something that colleges should always kind of be looking at and keeping in their back pocket in a sense, because it is a state that just has kind of similar to Louisiana, but I feel like college coaches in particular, think it's harder to get to. And, I think they don't spend as much time in that space because of that. You can fly into New Orleans, you can fly into Shreveport, you can fly in Monroe, these college coaches can fly into Lafayette. You can, kind of do all sorts of different things. You can work Houston to New Orleans and along the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, but junior college is pretty darn good in Mississippi. And anyway, I think it is a fascinating world, and I think it's a world SMU should always dabble in. out there in Mississippi JUCOs to address roster needs. And with JUCO players, oftentimes they're kind of looking for a good situation. They're looking to, obviously get a fresh start. And I think with the transfer portal being the shiny object, you can get a little bit more bang for your buck in some opportunities. So Jarquez Perry, a name to know as we kick off the recruiting show. Appreciate unoriginal channel name 1524 for chiming in with us. Early start for the recruiting show this morning. That's right. I was awake. I was awake this morning and well organized over a chill weekend. So excited to get back on track with you guys on the recruiting show. And this is that time of year that I'm sure we'll be coming together maybe on a Friday to do it. We're doing our live Monday chat as well, letting the questions filter in on the Pony Express message board right now for that. Subscribe for just $1 to ontheponyexpress.com and join us where we talk recruiting all day, every day. If you scan this QR code on your screen right now, it'll take you to the sign up page for On the Pony Express, which you can join for just $1. And I mentioned on the Sunday show that we did that we're now partnered with the alumni engagement team. So thrilled about that. But our bread and butter, of course, will be recruiting. And so make sure you guys, I'll leave that up there for a little bit longer. The QR code is going to take you right to the sign up page for On the Pony Express, where you can join our message board. So let's get into the meat of this show. And I want to lead off with quarterback because I did talk with De'Eric King, SMU quarterbacks coach, about Cole Leinart and what he's going to bring to the table. Somebody who is a big kid. And if you look at the pictures of Cole that are, in the stories that I did on him and this and that, and if you really want to kind of, go down the Googling path, I mean, he is a big kid. He's 6'4", almost 6'4". He's listed at 185, but he's kind of got that like big chest to him. Like he's going to be all of 6'3", 225 in a good way in a college program. And I think from talking with De'Eric, he's been through a lot. He's had his offense coordinator fired midway through the season from what I believe happened. He has changed multiple high schools, which, is kind of a red flag for me, but he is somebody who also has, tons of family that are athletes. Obviously, his dad, Matt Leinart, Heisman Trophy winner, elite, legendary USC quarterback. His mom was an athlete as well in college. And so he's got some traits to him. He is going to be somebody that sits and waits his turn at SMU. But his dad was a late bloomer. And SMU doesn't need somebody who's ready now. They have Kevin Jennings next year. They have Ty Hawkins as the quarterback in waiting, in a sense. You have Malachi Ziegler as a 2027. Even if some world where Cole Leinart waits all the way until Ty Hawkins exhausts his eligibility and plays for 1 year, you're in a great situation there. And maybe that is, a point where if he's still on the roster, that's a good thing and they see it. But at worst, you've taken a low-risk program guy who can be in the quarterback room in this 2026 class, and he's going to enroll early and get right to work. So good opportunity for Cole to get on the field and see him early. But there really wasn't too much to take away from our conversation outside of what I kind of already thought. And that was, I see the vision for Cole Leinart, where his dad was a late bloomer. He could be a late bloomer. He's a big kid. I think he actually kind of throws the ball fairly well. I think he has a lot to work on as far as overall like decision making, just kind of what he's asked to do in the offense. What does that look like? So I'll say this, and I'm not trying to toot my own quarterback horn here, but I feel like by the time spring ball rolls around, I'll be able to see fairly quickly whether he'll have, let's just say, like a real shot to develop. Like, are there traits? Does the ball come out well in the college setting? All of those things that you can kind of see early on as quarterbacks that some guys have, some guys don't. Like, you could see Kevin Jennings had the pop on his arm. He was just skinny as all get out. You could see even, look, Keldrick Luster made some incredible throws at SMU in practice, and it didn't work out for him, too well at Texas State. They did not have the season they wanted, but he'll have an opportunity maybe next year to put it all together. Brad Jackson, the Texas State quarterback, ended up being the guy, and you feel for Keldrick in that regard. But you can see guys that can actually throw the ball and have a shot. I thought Tyler Aronson just was kind of clunky at times as far as his throwing motion goes, and you can kind of tell in that regard. But we'll see how Cole Leinert looks early in his SMU tenure, because he'll be here in January. Good question here. Any chance they transition him to tight end? If he doesn't work out at QB, he'd have the size, and if he adds the weight, and would take some of the processing problems off. I'd be more inclined to say he'd probably transfer. That's my guess. But can't take it off the table. Who knows? Ask Stone Eby, but he is. I think at tight end, you'd want, if he was like 6'5", 6'6", maybe that would be something that would be more like, okay, yeah, you could see that right away. But I think he's probably more apt to transfer if it didn't work out at quarterback. Calvin Hamilton, definitely got to get some edge rushers and some corners. That's right. We are going to talk transfer portal in that respect later this week. We'll kind of break that down a little bit more, especially once we get Brett Lashley a media availability and get a practice schedule out and things like that, and kind of know who's out there, who's not, things like that. So we'll kind of break that down a little bit more, no doubt. Appreciate you two being in the chat with me on this, but do want to move on though to the running backs and kind of what Kyle Cooper and Tyler Foster saw when it comes to them. But before we do that, want to remind you guys about our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Again, reach out to them and plan the trip of a lifetime, maybe out to San Diego for the Holiday Bowl. They can get you in, they can get you out, reasonable price on that, and take care of you with the discount on your round trip flight when you mention On the Pony Express. So go to statusjet.com for more information on that and how they can help you, of course. And also want to remind you guys about our friends at Game Time. GameTime.co is where you can go to get your Holiday Bowl tickets. It is the perfect time to use code ON3 when you create your account for $20 off your first purchase. The Game Time app is super easy to breeze through and breeze around. It is not a app that is going to make you go through all sorts of different steps. That's what I love about it. You're going to be able to click in probably three clicks once you're at the game or the event that you want. And you can scroll through all the different options. There's plenty of seats in the house in Snapdragon Stadium. Some really good seating as far as the perks go. It's very like club level centric and things like that. So take advantage of it by purchasing through our friends at Game Time. Some of the tickets are pricey right now, but hey, that's why you use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with the Game Time app, and you can help find yourself those super deals or those zone deals where you can get the lowest price guaranteed. That is ON3 for $20 off your first order. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Great opportunity to try it out. And also might as well use it for SMU UNC as well. So that game on January 3rd in Dallas. We'll say this about the running back room. Christian Rhodes, EJ Kelly, two of the highest rated prospects in this class for SMU. If we could get a couple of the ranking services to come around on a couple of these guys, SMU could potentially move up the recruiting ranks late. But let's start with the last guy in the running back room, EJ Kelly, one of the most explosive running backs in America at Houston Klein High School. He was outstanding this year, building off a really strong junior campaign. SMU was able to get him into the fold, and look, it was a unique scouting opportunity for Kyle Cooper to be in position to get a guy like EJ Kelly. He is a I don't want to say undersized, but he's he's got a chance to really build himself um, up into what he needs to as a college running back, but he's big enough where he's not going to be a liability and being too small. He's not like a scat back. Like he's not slight. And I've seen him work out at SMU. I saw him when he really put on his camp showing that helped SMU, turn up the heat here. And that is certainly something that stands out to me is he's almost I'm trying to find a comparison for him, but I've really struggled this cycle with that. I mean, Christian Rhodes, it's an easy comparison, between Jermichael Green and obviously Rhett Lashley, made the comparison with a young Eric Dickerson. But these two guys are really, really exciting players for SMU to have in the future at the running back position. They're both 4-star prospects. They're both guys that were locked in regardless of what was going on. And, the position being kind of stacked up. So, my biggest takeaway was just how physically ready Christian Rhodes is. And you don't necessarily want to put that on him, but he's going to stand out to people when he's on the football field as somebody who will be able to play right away. And that's going to work, I think, against him as far as what people are going to think about him right away. And hey, why isn't Christian Rhodes getting in the game? Or why isn't this? Why isn't that? He is somebody that is going to have to learn the pass blocking situation. He's going to have to, obviously figure out going to class and doing all of those things and getting acclimated. But physically, he will jump out at you when SMU has him on the practice field and gets him in position to start getting ready to play. And at the same time, the running back room is built where there's going to be opportunity. TJ Harden departs. They're probably going to look at adding a veteran back like they did with TJ Harden. But you're going to have Jermichael Green. You're going to have Chris Johnson Jr., Derek McFall. You're going to have EJ Kelly. And it's a talented group that is now fairly deep. It's just young. So Christian Rhodes, if he can be that level of maturity that, picks it all up really quickly. Like, think about Jermichael Green if he didn't get nicked up in fall camp a little bit and he had that death in the family that really kind of hampered him playing a bunch this year. But man, you can kind of see the talent between Christian Rhodes and EJ Kelly. And they're really excited about this running back room that is now like really fun to think about. Now, this upcoming year, with what they have coming back on the offensive line, you have to think that this running back room, I mean, SMU should have 1,000-yard rusher this year. I mean, in my opinion, and that has nothing to do with the recruiting class and who's going to be, toting the rock, back there. I just think the offensive line, coupled with the talent, TJ Harden had 750-ish yards on the ground this year. You push that to the next level, get 1,000-yard back like they had last year with Brashard Smith totaling 1,300 yards. That'll make a big difference. SMU rushed for 2,300 yards last year. This year, 1,600. It was a lot of Kevin Jennings, doing it, through the air that SMU had to kind of deal with. So now the running back room really just built up as far as a talent level perspective wise in a really, really good spot. So we'll be keeping a close eye on how Christian and EJ develop as things go on here, and we'll see. It'll be fun to watch. I can say that much, no question about it. So we move on to the wide receiver room. Rob Likens signed yet another highly thought of class here at SMU with what they have in place now with Aljur Miles, with Xavier Barnett, with Ja'Kai Anderson, and with Ty Crothers. And the main takeaway I had from talking with Rob Likens and Aljur Miles, his family, like if they're watching, if they're paying attention to everything right now, love them. I think Aljur is going to be the one to play early and play often out of this receiver room. He's going to kind of be the Jalen Cooper. But talking with Rob Likens about Xavier Barnett and his background, this is a guy that is coming over from East Texas, or not East Texas, Yoakum, and bringing a ability to play play kind of all over. Like Rob was kind of talking about it from the standpoint of, well, if he gets here and gets on a college strength program, I mean, maybe he becomes, an RJ Maryland or whatever. And I think he was just kind of saying that, but he is somebody that is so raw from the standpoint of what he like has available to him to be the type of player that he wants to be. And it's fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to me to watch his development. And he is somebody that can absolutely go and get it down the field. He also plays defensive end and had some sacks, and he never really came off the field. And he's just a football player and also hoops and does that as well. He's going to be the long-term kind of developmental receiver in a sense. Probably the least polished is my guess. That's just my guess. But he is somebody that they just throw the ball to, they get it to him in space, and he just goes. And he's got a chance to win a state championship this week on Thursday. And he's just an awesome kid. I mean, we've spent a lot of time together and been able to do that, and or spent a lot of time talking for the most part. But I've also seen him on campus a bunch. So he is all in. He's been. I mean, I think he took maybe one other visit and he camped at LSU, which really isn't too far of a drive. I think he went with some teammates over the summer, but he was committed, January 10th, and just locked in and never wavered. So kudos to Rob Likens for putting this class together. But Xavier Barnett's upside is what really stood out to me when talking with Rob Likens about him. I think he's somebody that I think the rankings should kind of take another look at, because he is so just raw and talented and doesn't necessarily get the buzz that other players will, because they're not on big high school teams, or they're not this or they're not that. Xavier Barnett is somebody who really stands out to me in that regard. So I think Aljur Miles, he's like I said, he's the play early, play often type of wide receiver, just with his maturity, coming in early, doing all the things that he's going to have a chance to do as an early enrollee. I'm keeping a close eye on him and his development track to be able to play early and be an impact on the outside receiver spot. He physically, like, Aljur stands out. I mean, he is a big dude that is pretty college ready. And then Ja'Kai Anderson has a chance. I think you with Dalen Singleton back, with Amir Knight back, you probably want Ja'Kai Anderson to redshirt, just from the standpoint of he's going to come in early, so he's going to get acclimated. He's explosive. He's going to have a chance to put on weight. Again, another guy that I think could use some of the resources at SMU and develop over the course of the year into somebody that they really feel can make a difference here in the long run. But he can do it all. He could play outside, he could play inside, he can return punts, kicks, do all those things. And I think with talking with Rob too, he felt like with a couple of these guys, like maybe Xavier Barnett or maybe Ty Crothers or Ja'Kai Anderson, those guys, you can kind of move them inside too, or you can kind of move them in and out a little bit and let them make plays. And Ja'Kai Anderson just does that. I mean, that's what he does all over the field. So really impressive prospect in that regard, and looking forward to seeing what he's all about on the field once we get a look at him during the early signing, or not the early signing period, during spring practice. So with that, Ty Crothers is kind of a wild card as well, just because he's had like such an interesting track. But what SMU loved about him was his ability to compete and get after it on the field. So quite the wild card sleeper there in Ty Crothers. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at Sportsmo. Sportsmo.org is where you can go to learn more about how you can set up your account to support your favorite college football team and more as they run the world as far as NIL and revenue sharing. This is a great way to make micro donations and pledges to your favorite college team. So sign up today at sportsmo.org when you download the app. Learn more about Sportsmo right here.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.
That's right. Let's mo and continue on with breaking down this class. The tight ends, Andre Nickerson and Zach Turner. I talked with Casey Woods, offensive coordinator, about them and just what both bring to the table. I think Andre Nickerson is somebody that they really see. They really see as a difference maker. He's just not enrolling early, but I kind of pressed him on a little bit of the comps in a sense, and college football playoffs right around the corner. He really kind of compared him to Oregon tight end that is really, really good. Kenyon Sadiq. He is a dominant hybrid tight end who can get it done. And I think Andre Nickerson is kind of in that mold as well. He's got a basketball background. He has the ability to make plays down the field. I'm really impressed with his film. I think he should be higher rated than he is. I'm really high on him. I think watching more and more of Zach Turner, I'm also impressed with him. And obviously, like, his production is there. Sometimes at Duncanville, with the amount of talent that they have and the amount of ability to manufacture good matchups because of that talent, I think kind of holds me back from thinking, okay, all right, this guy's going to be all world. But at the same time, he's been dominant for multiple years at the highest level of Texas high school football. So he'll also play for a state championship this weekend against North Shore. But both of these guys are super talented pass catchers. I think if SMU could find a way to get them on the field, that would be the role. And if they can both add the necessary weight to play kind of along the line of scrimmage, that is going to be the question I would have, is can they do that? And get into that one. So this is a position that is absolutely going to be a 1 to 2 guy difference maker position in the portal. You need Kevin Jennings to have a good tight end. We see what he can do when he has that and when they're working together well. So they've got to use the portal in that regard, but they will have Zach Turner on campus early to help out with that. And the tight end position, I would add too. I mean, they didn't really recruit multiple guys, in a good way. It was kind of Zach Turner was one of those guys for a long, long time. They kind of shot their shot with a couple of bigger name guys, but those two were the ones that were on board fairly. I mean, Zach Turner took a minute, but they felt good about him throughout the process there, and it kind of got dicey in the summer, and then they came back around and were able to win out. And I think the staff deserves a lot of credit for that, beating out Miami and Oklahoma. And sorry, this is what is fun and also interesting about doing this. It doesn't impact SMU, but a Texas native is entering the transfer portal, and it is Florida quarterback DJ Lagway. So quite the conversation there for your Monday SEC news dump from our own Pete Nakos, the former 5-star, is going to look at his options and see what happens in Gainesville as well. 2 years of eligibility. Incredible. Really interesting stuff there. But I'll tell you what, is an offensive line position for SMU that was also incredible. Garen Justice did an outstanding job. I shared some assessment on the offensive class at ontheponyexpress.com, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to do it for defense this week, but this is a this is an offensive line class that took probably 3 full years to recruit and develop and win out. And I frankly, I talked with Garen Justice last year and kind of off record. Well, we were on the record about the offensive line class and kind of what it was looking like it could be on 2026. And I just said, look, you see, without naming specifics, seems like you've gotten, so many guys on campus and you've gotten a jump start on it. He's like, we feel pretty good about being able to sign, a really good offensive line class. And that was kind of a paraphrased overall conversation we had. And sure enough, they did it. And he deserves a ton of credit. The big three, I would say, Papunga Katoa out of Euless Trinity, a win over Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and others in Texas and TCU weren't even in that one, despite him checking out those programs as well, because of the way SMU recruited him from a relationship perspective. Trinity High School and the Tungan community is just really, really high on building the right relationships. And Garen Justice and the staff, Jake Longy, did that. And then you get into, somebody who I don't want to say shocked people, but kind of shocked people. Drew Evers committing to SMU when he did, coming off of his Texas A&M official visit, and had been a favorite at Ohio State and had visited LSU, and SMU was the first school to get him on campus. They went out in that one. And I think I said it throughout the recruitment of Drew Evers. Drew Evers is the type of player that, with SMU being in the ACC, with SMU being successful on the field, that you have to win recruiting battles for. If you're SMU, he is in Dallas. He has even ties to the program. He's a great kid. He's got athletic ties and been around the sport for so long. You have to find a way to win this battle. And you have a staff and you have a recruiter that has been there on the job since he was a freshman. And they went out and get him. And that is just a huge deal for them to do that. And we'll, see if he can see the field early and do all those things. But, SMU made a big move by landing him. And right then and there, and by this point, Evan Goodwin, who was a huge, huge win over Missouri and Oklahoma State, and kind of a roundabout recruitment that SMU kind of had to, they didn't offer early or anything like that. They really kind of had to claw their way back into it. And they got him on campus for a spring visit, and it paid off in a huge way, and it kind of teed him up. But, this offensive line class and Evan is a huge literal piece to it. But the success of recruiting this offensive line class was always going to be judged by how did they do with the kids that they offered early and went after throughout the process. Because there's no better ambassador now, you could argue, in this class than Evan Goodwin. And he is just all locked in with SMU. And he is a huge win. But when you recruit guys like Papunga Katoa and Drew Evers and some of these other players for years, and you invest so much time and energy into it, that has to pay off. That's a part of judging how a recruiting class is done and how it's built. And Garen Justice just knocked it out of the park with those three guys this summer and built good enough relationships that when Sam Utu decided, hey, I'm going to reopen things and I think SMU is the place for me after committing to Alabama, that was awesome. And it was all relationship built. And the backstory that we're going to drop on the Pony Express on that one is just really kind of wild. But then you get Max Wright from Melissa, Texas in the boat too. And you add a late offensive lineman from Texas who is a projectable tackle. It's such a good job by this staff to manage it. to get it done. And there are guys that, went elsewhere. Zayden Crimpin and SMU kind of had a mutual, they were hot early and then it didn't materialize. You had John Turntine kind of in the same boat. SMU, I think, was one of the first schools to offer Felix Ojo. They had Dejan Moore was a guy who took I think maybe he took an official. Maybe he didn't end up taking an official, but kind of in that same boat where you had some, thought that he might end up in the class, but you got your top two targets, Drew Evers and Punga Katoa throughout the last 3 years. And then when you realized where things were going with Evan Goodwin, you got him in, and then you had two more high school pieces. So awesome job on the offensive line front for SMU. We're rolling through this podcast. It's going to be a long one. And speaking of which, if you're listening to this later on, you might want to try our friends at Los Charros and maybe have a margarita at the bar and throw it on your laptop and listen while you enjoy some of their incredible fajitas that they have to enjoy. I also had I'd have to pull up their menu, but I'll pull it up for you guys to share what I had with you when I went in there the other day. It was off of their Pony Express entree list. It was outstanding. I'm trying to find it now, but really, really good. They do just such an incredible job and putting together a great meal for you guys to enjoy over there on Hillcrest Avenue, Los Charros Tex-Mex Smokehouse. It is in the Graduate Hotel. And one of the best things about them too is that they pour Socorro tequila as well. You can find it there and try it. And our friends at Socorro are the perfect stocking stuffer in a sense. If you want for this holiday season, you order 3 bottles or more and you get free shipping. Great deal there to get that. I had the Dandy Don on the combos plate. That was what I had at Los Charros and washed it down with a little Socorro tequila as well in my margarita. So check out Socorro Tequila. Again, free shipping on 3 bottles or more. Go to socorrotequila.com and also just pull up to Los Charros. I think we're going to do something after the basketball game with Central Arkansas in town on Sunday. So stay tuned for more details on that. Just kind of floating it out there to you guys. We'll get it locked in here sooner rather than later. Let's turn to the defensive side of the ball. And as I sat there and looked, 40 minutes into this podcast, I thought, oh gosh, we've got a ton to get to. Well, we do and we don't. And on the back end, I'll lead off with Deuce Gilbert because I chatted with Ricky Hunley, SMU pass game coordinator, on Sunday. Maybe it was Saturday. Might have been. I think it was Saturday because it was really cold on Sunday and I couldn't have walked with Jack when I did it. But Deuce Gilbert coming into the fold, a recruiting win over Oklahoma, and somebody who I think has been, a long time SMU target, multiple years. I think he got his offer. Man, it's been a while. It might have been junior day after his sophomore year. Could be wrong on that, but the North Forney standout was a big target for SMU throughout the process. They're really high on his ability to develop into a well-rounded corner, both in man and zone. Talking with Ricky Hunley as an early enrollee, they're really excited to get their hands on him as far as playing more press man, which, SMU does and SMU also doesn't. But, North Forney was able to kind of put him in man-to-man situations because of his speed, also put him in zone. They also even played him at wide receiver, and because they needed some juice on offense as well. So that always is nice to see when you look at your defensive backs and look at them through the high school process and you see them play both sides of the ball, and that is a big deal. That's always a nice indicator. It was honestly before Markel Ford kind of went to Oklahoma, signed with Oklahoma, when he came back after kind of a roundabout eligibility thing and transferring and kind of a mess of an offseason for him, he was playing on the offensive side. And I was like, oh, maybe they do push to hang on to him. They end up letting him and Braylon Edwards kind of walk and knowing that at the safety position, they needed spots and money available and things like that to go after, somebody like big time in the transfer portal to impact that safety room and play alongside Bam Polly and Sile Reyes and some of these younger guys that are going to be out there, and Jaden Miller-Jones and Kyron Chambers, guys like that. And so they didn't sign a safety. And SMU's class in that respect, I mean, it's a failure, to not sign one safety. But at the same time, I wasn't high on Braylon Edwards when they first took his commitment. He ends up going elsewhere. And I think he committed to Colorado. Could be wrong. And then you have Markel Ford, who you took early. I think he committed like right before Braylon. He committed after the spring game. And I just kind of thought, this is a position that SMU could really find one guy and kind of build around in this class. You need to find your Tyron Polley. And I don't think the safety class overall is that impressive in the high school ranks this cycle. I really don't. SMU turned away multiple commitments and guys that wanted to come into the fold that ended up signing with some Power 4 programs. But when you look at this group, what we knew was the push needed to be for the safeties to be ready to play in 2026 because Ahmad Moses, because Isaiah Wacobia were going to be out the door. And so that makes it really difficult for them to invest in a high school safety that you say, okay, you're going to be a no-brainer day one starter. It's difficult to do, and so that's something that now in the portal, they're going to go out and address. So 2027, I think they have their claws in on a really highly thought of safety prospect on their end. Again, we're going to kind of break some of that down as we get into this month and look ahead to 2027. But the safety position has a chance in 2027 to get back on track like it did with Tyron Polley, with Sile Reyes, getting into the fold for this class in 2026 and Jalen Moses continuing to develop and all those things. So intriguing to see what happens at safety, but they did not sign one. They did sign one corner, and that's Deuce Gilbert. He'll have time to develop in a sense because you guys will know that Jay Holly and Zay Gentry are the young corners that'll be back next year. You have Speedy Nettles, Marcellus Barnes, Jalen Davis Robinson in that room. They'll probably bring in another transfer corner to kind of upgrade that position. We saw what happened when they didn't get one more corner this year. They really had to move guys all over the place. It was just kind of a mess. So you add a freshman to replace Deuce Harmon's number. Now you need to go out and get one more corner to make it all work. So intrigued to see how all that plays out at the corner position in 27. But 2026, SMU is really high on Deuce Gilbert's athletic ability, and what they've seen from him with his top end speed and his length. They feel like he has long arms and things like that to make plays on the ball. So that was the back end. Two of the prospects that are favorites in two very different ways. SMU getting Kenneth Goodwin the way they did with that whole drama-filled approach with Markel Dabney and everything that happened in that respect. And then Isaiah Young, who's one of the most locked-in guys on this team, probably he's just a great ball of energy. And he signed with SMU out of San Marcos. And this isn't supposed to be a full-blown class breakdown here as far as like how did SMU get these guys or whatnot. This is more about what they have, coming into the fold. And Isaiah Young is somebody that, in talking with Maurice Crum, he really feels like they have somebody that can play all over the place as far as the on ball or the on the line of scrimmage play that he's shown with San Marcos this year, and also the off ball play that he's shown with San Marcos this year. It's all there. And I think that's really intriguing as far as what they look for in a linebacker. His ability to rush the passer was something that they really liked about, Isaiah Young and what he brought to the table in that respect. So that was kind of interesting as far as what they look for and what they keep an eye on as far as the high school prospects and what they watch for. And Maurice Crum just really enjoyed the recruiting process with him as well as Kenneth Goodwin. And Kenneth Goodwin is an interesting scout because he's not been somebody who, has played a ton of football because he didn't have much of a senior year until he transferred to Miami Edison. So That was quite the process as well. You feel for him with his high school season going through what it went through, with his high school getting kind of, shut down as far as his senior year going. But they really love just his athletic traits and what he'll be able to bring in that respect, his size, kind of that ready to play now ability that he has. That was something that really stood out to Maurice Crum. So fascinating linebacker room to watch. And that room now has, I would say a lot of bodies in it. They lose Kyle Firm. I'll be interested to see if they lose one more, but they do have, all 4 major linebackers back, maybe 5 if Justin Medlock is back. And then you have Marky Inakor, who you feel like, okay, probably going to play some this year. Like his track, looked really good at the end of the year. And then Isaiah Young and Kenneth Goodwin, you would think they would, try to slowly bring those guys along. When I look at this defensive line group, and I talked with Calvin Thibodeau, haven't gotten a chance to talk with Sam Dunham. He is a pretty big deal. He was named to the AFCA under 35 under 35 list. So congratulations, Sam Dunham. He's one of the good guys on the staff, and we'll catch up at some point. But it's busy time, man. It's busy times for these coaches, and Dunham is looking for a difference maker defensive end in the transfer portal now as DJ Warner is headed out. But the good thing is you could talk about, the defensive line with Calvin Thibodeau and kind of all 4 spots. And, Keith Doty and Dakota Dixon are 2 guys that they targeted early on. And Keith was somebody who really kind of recruited himself to SMU. That was one big takeaway from talking with Tibbs. And just watching that process go through and watch Keith Doty legitimately. I mean, he probably took, I feel like 5 visits to SMU during spring practice. He was there at least half of spring ball. I mean, he really, really was. He was not a stranger, and he was able to come in and basically kind of show his interest level, and eventually SMU offered. And sometimes that's how that is how it goes. It's not always, these, love stories of the football staff courting them and doing all those things. But Keith Doty just showed how badly he wanted to be at SMU, and it paid off when they really, dove down and looked at him and just see how strong. And Calvin Thibodeau called him the best nose tackle in the state of Texas, in his opinion. So really high praise for him. Dakota Dixon, just the way he can move athletically. Both of these guys are going to have opportunities to play early, and they'll have a chance to make an impact. But Dakota Dixon is certainly somebody who I am high on. Calvin Thibodeau is high on. And they had to win a big recruiting battle out there in California for him. And, the upside is there with Thibodeau, having gotten his hands on him in camp and working with him. And that was really kind of what, really kept this thing moving in the right direction. He's really, really smart. He's got a toughness about him, is what Calvin Thibodeau said. So they really think he has some good things going his way. So keep an eye on Dakota Dixon. And then Amontre Harris is kind of a freak. I mean, from what I've enjoyed catching up with, this coaching staff about in terms of, him being committed to TCU at one point and quickly visiting SMU and then flipping shortly thereafter, or kind of shortly thereafter for the most part. But, SMU's first offer in this recruitment, and that was really important. But the relationship that they built and what they were able to do in that regard was really, really important there. So looking forward to catching up with Dunham, more about him. And then, of course, Hudson Woods was somebody who, just jumped on SMU early when they were recruiting him, and ends up committing in the summer out of Smithson Valley. He's a winner, and he's going to be somebody that you watch develop over the next couple of years into, I think he's going to have a huge frame to him. And he's going to be able to play that strong side defensive end spot. And then finally, Calvin Thibodeau and Sam Dunham signed quite the junior college duo in David Chukwumeka and Tavion Atkinson. Tavion Atkinson isn't getting here until the summer, but there are some unique ties there. Calvin Thibodeau, his dad, or Calvin Thibodeau and Tavion Atkinson's dad were two of the top defensive tackles in the state of Texas. And they were right there, getting recruited by the same programs and things like that. And, the relationship was kind of forged a little bit early there. His dad has since passed away. But the talent level that his dad had, and now, Calvin Thibodeau seeing it in him and Sam Dunham seeing it in him, they're just so excited about him and what he can bring to the table at that strong side defensive end position. He was, he was like, the story was so interesting. He was like 215 or something, and then grew into 270, really kind of overnight since getting to junior college. And so it's kind of been quite the battle between, him and Dunham, kind of fighting for him in their rooms, I think. But, really, really talented player who's got some great football ahead. And then David Chukwumeka is somebody that SMU got tipped off on with Mark Ianakor, his former teammate, saying, hey, you should take a look at this guy. Well, 6'7", 275 pounds. He's just a freak of nature. And what he's going to be able to do from an athletic perspective is very elite. But when you look at him from a standpoint of knowing the game, it's going to take him a minute. So he's a body in a good way right now, like a body that you could throw out there and maybe let him play and let him get some burn. I think David is one of those players that early this coming year will still be figuring it out. But once it all turns on for him, it's going to be pretty darn special to watch that unfold for David Chukwumeka and talking with Calvin Thibodeau. And then SMU did, I don't know if they announced this one or not, but do want to note Wiley Olson, Austin Vandergrift kicker, is one of the best in the state of Texas, and SMU is adding him into the fold to compete with Sam Keltner. So really interesting recruiting class here that ranks in the top 25 for SMU, but one that continues to lay the groundwork for some great teams to come, in my opinion. So we're watching it all unfold at ontheponyexpress.com. So subscribe for just $1 for your first month and join us over there. Before we go, I do want to remind you guys about Corporate Magic, corporatemagic.com. Visit them to learn more about, visit corporatemagic.com to learn more about what they can do for you in the event space. They have an incredible team with decades of success in building events that meet the mark and more, whether it's national sales meetings, global broadcasts, streamed events, and production seen by millions. You should trust their expertise to get it done for you at a high level. Big stages demand a partner who know how to perform when the stakes are high. That is a Corporate Magic. So visit corporatemagic.com for more information on how they can help you and make your event the place to be and one that is memorable for years to come. Do want to end on this, and then I'll let you guys go and get out of here and get back to work on this Monday. It's 9:30 after all, everyone. What went right? What went wrong in this recruiting class? I think what went right, I think for the most part, SMU did a really good job of identifying players early, and that was their group. And they didn't waver from that for the most part. Evan Goodwin, EJ Kelly, and I think that's kind of the group that stands out to me, at least, were the ones that you kind of saw them pivot to a little bit more later on in the process. Obviously, the JUCO guys are the JUCO guys, but Max Wright was a guy who visited early on. Samu too, even though he got added late. I mean, he officially visited. Their group. Ja'Kai Anderson was another one that was kind of late, but they really identified a lot of these players early on. And this, I mean, most of this class, I go up and down, right? And Ty Crothers was the camp guy, but he actually had an offer like a full year and a half before. All of these guys, most of these guys, I knew and could recognize them, from across the field because that's how many times they had been at SMU. Papunga Katoa, Drew Evers, Aljor Miles, uh, Xavier Barnett. Those are the guys that in state I was like, wow, this is a group that they're recruiting really hard. I mean, I have photos of Drew Evers. I think he was a freshman at SMU spring game when it was at Highland Park. So a lot of these guys, I mean, Hudson Woods has been around a ton, Deuce Gilbert around a ton. So you look at this group, and they've had so many of these guys on campus a ton. And to see that finally come together from a standpoint of they weren't changing leagues, they had success on the field in the Power Four that they could share. They had this, they had that. They didn't have anything standing in their way of signing a class like this. And then they went out and did it. Now, there's areas where they can still kind of improve and get better at, and sign a higher level player in certain situations, or go get this guy or go get that guy. And some years it might look differently, right? Like, I have said this. I think the corner recruiting. We talked about the safety earlier this cycle, or earlier this podcast, with for 27 probably can take that next step up. But like Andre Clark was not somebody, for example, that SMU was considered to be this like big time leader player throughout his recruitment for. And then he takes that official and it's like everything changed. He ends up going to Michigan and that ends up being the pick. But man, SMU was like there all of a sudden. So they did a really nice job. I still wish they would have taken another high school corner. I think somebody like Savorian Martin, who signed with Texas Tech, they ended up not really pressing for him. I mean, he didn't even take an official visit to SMU. At the same time, I'm sitting there like, hey, 6'2", 185-pound cornerbacks don't necessarily grow on trees. So very intrigued to see how he does at Texas Tech. But SMU didn't press for him. I mean, they had him on campus. They had him on campus multiple times, and they didn't press. So, there's only so much you can do. But like, what went wrong in a sense, Shavar Young sticking with Clemson, there was a really, really strong chance that was one that SMU had kind of worked quietly in the middle of the night, and it looked like they were going to get it done. And it wasn't just one night, it was multiple nights, but he ends up sticking with Clemson after committing to them before his senior year, or before his junior year got underway. SMU had worked him. And there was a point where it looked like he was going to flip, and he ends up sticking with Clemson. So if he ever enters the transfer portal down the line, keep an eye on SMU in that one is my guess. But we'll see how that goes. But overall, SMU, as far as what went wrong, it's interesting how you judge recruiting classes, right? Like, I look at Vic Lincoln, somebody SMU ultimately, I mean, flat out just dropped. And, he ends up signing with Ole Miss. And he was a late ad by Lane Kiffin and that group. Now, I still don't think he's somebody that, you look at from the high school ranks and you're like, oh, wow, this is this big time player that an SEC team should be signing. But, Ole Miss probably needs some corners. So they sign him and bring him in. But that's interesting to always see sometimes where your flips and this and that go, or not your flips, but where your kind of drops or not press guys like Zayden Crimpin at SMU was high on very early, and they ended up not really pushing for him, and it ended up not being a place that Zayden really saw himself anyway. But he goes to Texas A&M, and I think the best guy out of his class is Bryce Gilmore, who's committed to Texas Tech, and SMU didn't even offer him because they didn't see him that way. So it's fascinating to watch how things play out. And then we'll look back 2-3 years from now and say, oh, wow, look at how that played out, or look at how this played out, things like that. So, but that was kind of a long-winded way of saying, I think the secondary was a really interesting class. I thought there were a bunch of options SMU had. Deuce Gilbert was one that they worked really hard for. He was at one point committed to A&M. Then it was SMU, Oklahoma. They went out, huge recruiting battle win. But I just also feel like there were a couple guys like Jordan Deck signed with Michigan. SMU got him on campus a bunch. And obviously Michigan's Michigan, but wasn't able to kind of turn the corner there. And I don't know if SMU turned the, like gas on there. I know that SMU's top safeties in the state of Texas were Donovan Webb at Panther Creek and Braylon Edwards, at least going into spring practices. And Markel Ford ends up being in there, and they take that commitment and see where it went. And it ended up not being a deal for them. So they had a bunch of different secondary guys that they could have taken or pushed for. And, they were very particular knowing that they need to address corner and safety in this transfer portal window and things like that. So other than that, I really don't know what else went wrong. I mean, it was a really good class for the most part. And SMU did a really nice job. You always want to be able to sign a 5-star at some point. It didn't happen in this class, and we'll see what they can pull up with 2027. But really good class as far as what SMU wanted to do and get accomplished. So we appreciate you guys listening to this long-winded recruiting show, but it's been a fun one. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back later this week as we start to break down what's going on the field for SMU ahead of the Arizona game in the Holiday Bowl. And we'll talk some transfer portal and recruiting later this week on the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.